close to the end now. Welcome back and welcome to Chapter 14, Handling Errors. So, I'm sure you've had a number of errors over the course of the semester, um, but now we're going to look at ways that we can handle errors and hopefully recover from them, at least the ones that we can anticipate, using some constructs inside of Java. Our concepts for this lecture are going to be defensive programming, which is basically trying to figure out what things could go wrong and trying to account for them so that the program doesn't crash to the console. We will talk about the Java constructs of exception handling and throwing exceptions and error reporting. And then because this is required, you must use exceptions when dealing with input-output. We will also deal with some simple file processing, and that'll be where your project is focused on reading and writing files, both text files and binary files. So let's get started. If you haven't figured it out by now, programs will crash, and it might not be your fault as the programmer. I mean, it could be that it's an incorrect implementation, in which case the program written doesn't meet the program specifications, or the program written meets an interpretation of the specifications, but the specifications are nebulous. And so this will, start a chain of bug reports and bug fixes and negotiations to solve the problem. But it might not be the implementation. It could be that the wrong object is being sent, or a wrong integer or a primitive is being passed. So an index to an array or an array list that is outside the bounds of the array will create a problem. Another possibility is that in more complex solutions that the object that you're using might just get into an incomplete or inappropriate internal state. And, through objects being extended and changes happening to protected variables, an assumption that you're not aware of could be initiated by a different calling method. We call these side effects, and tracing these down can be time-consuming and frustrating and problematic. So these things happen on the programmer side, but it's not always the programmer. It could just be the computing environment that you're working with. It could be that you need to pull information off of across the network from a URL, and the URL is incorrect. It could be you're in the middle of transferring a large file, and the network drops. Could be you're on an operating system such as Unix, where you have robust user permissions, and you're not able to read or write to that file or that directory, or the file that you're anticipating to find there has been deleted or moved. So in these instances, the program can't continue, but the program can't complete its task, but the program still might be able to continue with some assistance from someone to reinitiate the transfer, or to point to where the file's new location is, or some other possible solution. So before we get to how we will resolve that, let's look at some possible responses to errors. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and look at the project address book and go through some of the exercises, via the homework, to explore how this project works. And we're going to look at this as the basis for talking about either reporting the errors back to the user or handling the errors in code. So let's look at reporting the errors first. As we think about reporting the errors, let's bring in the concept of defensive programming. remember that the client object asks the server object for information. So we're making a method call, and then the server is going to reply with information back to the client. Now, that client object may be passing parameters into the method. And one of the things that we need to ask ourselves is, should we have error checking code on the server side? Do we assume that the client information is going to be well behaved? Or do we assume that the client might be trying to look for the client object, or the client data stream might be looking for a place to actually disrupt the system, but potentially get access and run unauthorized code with higher permissions. And honestly, this is where so many true hacks come from. So not like phishing attempts or finding exploits on the dark web and just implementing them, or distributed denial of service attacks. What we're talking about here is the craft of hackers that really understand the way computer systems work. So if you watched the supplemental lecture on the little man computer, for instance, you were reminded of the fact that memory is just a sequential listing of bytes. If we're not careful, if the server object is assuming the clients are well behaved and won't try to overflow an array, let's say, a crafty hacker can actually pass more data than is reasonable to that parameter, and much, much more data than is reasonable to that parameter, and overwrite the code. And if you remember that the opcodes are just patterns of bytes, just like our data is just patterns of bytes, if it overwrites enough code, it then becomes not data, but it moves into the section of memory that is treated as code. So when you read about serious exploits to computer systems, what's happening in a lot of instances is that the programmers allowed for data to get out of control, and properly formatted data becomes instructions. And so I encourage you to look into your own computer security for personal reasons, maintaining your own personal firewalls and everything, but also as programmers, you should at least take a little bit of an interest in how to protect the objects you create from potential exploitation. So with that in mind, we're going to look at two different possible ways to approach this. Is the burden on the client to make sure that the data that comes back from the server good, or is the burden on the server to check everything that's coming in? And if the burden is on the server, how much checking is enough on the server? If the server finds errors, how does it report those errors? If the client is asking something for the server and the server can't give it, how does the client anticipate that problem and recover from it? And if it can't recover from it, what does the client need to do to deal with failure instead of just crashing with a stack trace? So let's look at a particular example. Go ahead and create an address book entry. Create an address book object with nothing inside of it, and then try to remove an entry. When you do that, you're going to get a runtime error. Well, which part of the code is at fault? It depends on which way you answer the questions that we were asking. A much more useful solution, rather than having programming teams pointing fingers, is to realize that there is a potential problem here and try to prevent the problem from occurring. So let's look at the values that are being passed in. The values are a potential point of vulnerability for the server. If that server could be the constructor for the object, or it could be method arguments. One thing the server can do is to check to make sure that the objects have reasonable parameters so you don't start with an inconsistent state for the object or an unreasonable state for the object being created. So in the address book, for instance, the address book is not usable if we don't have a key, or if we pass in a key that is not inside of the address book, because it's just a map behind the scenes. So instead of just assuming that the key that comes in is going to refer to an object in the address book, we can pass that key first to the key in use method, which returns true if the key is available and false if it's not. And then only if the key is in use do we actually go ahead and try to issue the removes. Of course, if the key is not in use, we just drop out and there's no indication that there was a problem, right? If key in use is false, we skip over the if. We come to the end of the method, and as far as the client's concerned, it doesn't know that nothing happened. But, there's also the question of, like, where does the server object report this error? Are we doing an app where there's someone pressing buttons and we can just report directly to the person looking at the screen? And even if we had someone looking at the screen, are they someone who could solve the problem? And if not, does that undermine the confidence in the system? So we could report it to the user, or do we report it to the client object? And if we report it to the client object, there's actually a couple of ways we can do that. We could return a Boolean, true we were successful or false we were not, a diagnostic value, or we could throw an exception. Let's wrap this part of the lecture by looking at the diagnostic value, and then we'll get into how do we throw exceptions. So, dealing with the diagnostics, instead of remove details being void, now remove details returns a Boolean. And we pass in the key. Is the key in use? If it's not, now we have an else clause and we'll return false, indicating we did not remove. But if the key is in use, we will go ahead and remove those objects and return true, indicating that we succeeded. Now this looks like a good solution, because on the client side, the client can check for success. If contacts.removeDetails, if that returns true, we know what we can do. Else, contacts.removeDetails must have been false, and now we have to do some kind of recovery. So this seems to solve the problem, but there's a kind of insidious problem. If the client object tests the return value, life is good. But it's also possible to get that Boolean back and not do a thing with it. There's no programming mechanism that says you have to pay attention to this Boolean if we're just passing a diagnostic value. So it might be like, okay, well, we'll implement that later, and maybe you'll never get around to it, and then there's a potential for inconsistency. Or maybe you just never pay attention to the value at all. Might be one of those cases like, why is it handing me a Boolean? I'm just going to keep writing this stuff. And so while diagnostic values are useful, they are not enforceable. And that leads us to the Java construct of an exception. So let's take a break for a moment. When we come back, we'll look at exceptions, what they are, how to write them, how they're used.